Ladies and gentlemen, picture yourself walking into a room after months of silence, and suddenly there they are, the narcissist from your past, staring directly at you, trying to scan every part of you like a map they once assumed they owned. But here's the truth they'll never admit. They don't return because of love, regret, or genuine concern. They come back because they sense something slipping out of their grasp. Your power, your peace, your glow. Today, I'm going to reveal what happens the instant they see you again and why this moment can become a major turning point in your life. The return of a narcissist after a long period of silence is almost never a coincidence. It may appear spontaneous on the surface, a sudden message, an unexpected moment, a casual, "Hey, how have you been?" But beneath that simple gesture is a calculated reaction to something they've sensed. Narcissists are sharply tuned to shifts in attention, control, and emotional availability. When you go quiet, when you pull back your energy, when you stop fueling the connection that once kept them centered, they feel it instantly. Silence to a narcissist isn't harmless, it's threatening. It signals a loss of control, a break in the dynamic they believed they had permanently secured. That's why their return is never random. They come back the moment they sense you've stepped into a different version of yourself, someone they can't predict or direct. Your absence forces them to face a reality they despise. They're no longer the gravitational center of your emotional universe. And for a narcissist, that is unbearable. Your silence removes their reflection, and without that reflection, they begin to feel invisible, unimportant, and unacknowledged. They cannot sit in that feeling for long. So when they reappear, it's not because they suddenly appreciate your worth in a healthy human way. It's not because they've awakened to your value or want to make things right. They come back because they sense you've regained strength, clarity, and autonomy, qualities that threaten their ability to manipulate you. They return because your silence has disrupted the emotional system they depend on, and they need to know whether they can still reach you, influence you, or pull you back into the same familiar emotional patterns. The irony is that it's your growth, not your need, that draws them back. They are pulled toward the glow of your healing, the steadiness of your boundaries, the peace they can no longer penetrate. Your evolution triggers their re-entry. But here is the deeper truth. Their return is not a sign of love. It is a sign of loss, their loss. It's a reaction to the changed power dynamic, a final attempt to reclaim relevance in a story that no longer revolves around them. When you understand that their return is not coincidence, you stop romanticizing it. You see it clearly for what it is, a reflection of your strength, not their sincerity. Their reappearance becomes proof that your silence is working, that your healing is visible, and that you are stepping into a life where their influence no longer defines your world. And when you recognize that their return is triggered by your strength, not your weakness, something else becomes strikingly clear: the power of the silence that led you here. Silence in this process wasn't just the absence of talking, it was the presence of self-respect. It was the point where you stopped reacting to chaos and started responding to your own soul. That quiet space you created wasn't empty. It was a boundary forming, a new identity emerging, a declaration that said, "I am no longer available for my own destruction." That silence, your silence, is what rattled them. Narcissists survive on emotional noise. Your explanations, your defenses, your reactions, your pain, all that noise fuels their sense of importance. When you stop providing that soundtrack, they have nothing left to stand on. For the first time, they're left alone with themselves, and that is the one place they never want to be. Silence forces them to face a mirror they've spent their entire lives avoiding. And while your quiet unsettled them, it strengthened you. During those weeks or months of distance, something inside you steadied. You began hearing your own thoughts again. You started noticing the difference between love and manipulation, between connection and control. Silence gave you back your intuition, the very voice they tried to convince you to ignore. So when they reappear, it's because your silence has destabilized the dynamic they relied on. They come back to disrupt it, to drag you back into the noise, to test whether your quiet was temporary or transformative. But what they don't realize is that silence has changed you. It grounded you. It brought you home to yourself. And that more than anything is what terrifies them. And because that silence transformed you, their next move becomes incredibly predictable. When they understand they can't disturb your peace with their absence, they try to disturb it with their presence. And they attempt it using the method they know best: charm. Charm is their favorite doorway, their smoothest disguise, their fastest shortcut into a space they never deserved to occupy. So when they see you again after all that silence, they don't lead with responsibility or humility. They lead with shine, with confidence, with a warm smile that feels familiar enough to lower your guard, yet rehearsed enough to be dangerous. They know their charm once worked like a magnetic pull. It drew you in without resistance, and they're desperate to believe that time hasn't changed that. You'll notice it instantly. Their tone softens, their eyes warm with a kind of affection they never consistently showed. They may admire you in ways they never did when they actually had you. Or they might try to recreate a moment, a joke, a memory, a subtle nostalgia, anything to make your heart react before your mind does. But underneath that charm is a frantic truth. They're not trying to reconnect, they're trying to re-enter. They're checking whether they still have access to the version of you who mistook charisma for care. They're hoping your silence rebuilt strength, but not discernment. But this time, you see what used to be hidden. You understand that their charm isn't an invitation. It's a tactic, a test, a probe to check whether your boundaries are real or temporary. And the beauty is, your silence prepared you for this exact moment. You can feel the charm without being pulled in. You can hear the melody without dancing to it. You can watch the performance without giving them the stage again. Because now you know that charm isn't love, it's camouflage, and you no longer confuse the two. And once that charm fails to affect you the way it once did, something flickers in their expression. Subtle, quick, almost invisible unless you've learned how to spot it. Because in that instant, they realize you're not enchanted anymore. You're not leaning forward, you're not melting, you're simply observing. And that's when their inner calculation begins. If charm won't work, what else can they try? And this is where the fourth truth becomes impossible to ignore. They are drawn to your glow, the light you've built during the silence. When they see you again, the very first thing they notice isn't your clothes or your words. It's your energy. They scan you for it like a thief searching for valuables. They want to know, are you brighter than before? Do you seem happier, calmer, more whole? Do you radiate something they no longer have access to? Because narcissists are attracted to emotional brightness the way drought seeks water. They consume others' energy not because they value it, but because they can't generate their own. When you were with them, they fed on your empathy, your sensitivity, your hopefulness, your depth. But now, after the silence, they sense your glow has shifted. It's no longer something they can mold or drain. It's something you built inside yourself, for yourself. And here's the twist. Your glow doesn't just attract them, it unsettles them. They notice strength where they once saw need. They see boundaries where they once sensed permission. They see a person standing firmly in front of them, not someone leaning in their direction. And that disrupts everything they were counting on. So when they reach toward your glow with compliments, nostalgia, or curious questions, understand what they're really doing. They're searching for the old version of you, the one who lived to meet their emotional needs. But instead, they find a person who learned how to shine without them. And that realization, more than anything, shakes them to their core. And when your glow both draws them in and pushes them away at the same time, they instinctively shift into their next strategy, testing. Because once they realize they can't charm the light out of you, they begin hunting for any old doorway they might still slip through. This is where the fifth truth becomes painfully clear. They test your boundaries the moment they're in front of you. It happens fast, almost artfully. They might bring up a memory that once made you emotional just to see if it still softens your expression. They'll reference a mistake you made long ago, watching for the old guilt. They may compliment you in a way that feels strangely familiar, like the praise they once used to keep you attached. And if none of that works, they'll aim at an old wound, a subtle reminder of a vulnerable moment, waiting to see if your voice trembles the way it used to. These tests aren't random, they're intentional. Narcissists have always studied you like a map, where you were soft, where you were open, where you once hesitated to walk away. So when your glow signals that you've evolved, they begin pressing those familiar emotional switches, hoping even one still responds. They're not seeking connection, they're searching for leverage. And here's the beautiful truth: your silence has rewired the entire system. Those buttons no longer behave the way they used to. The wound doesn't reopen, the guilt doesn't rise, the nostalgia doesn't drag you back. Instead, their tests reveal something they never imagined. Your emotional growth, your clarity, your distance. You feel the pull of the past, but you don't move toward it. And that's when they begin to realize the truth they always feared. The version of you they once influenced is gone, and the person standing before them now is someone they can no longer reach through old patterns or old injuries. It's in that realization that their power truly begins to fall apart. And when every strategy they try collapses, when the memories stop reeling you in, when the guilt doesn't bend your spirit, when the old cuts don't reopen, they begin to feel something they never expected in your presence. Fear. Not fear of you, but fear of the transformation they cannot undo. Because now we reach the sixth truth, the one they hide behind their polished charm and forced confidence. They fear the new you. This fear shows itself quietly at first, a flicker in their expression when you don't respond the way you once did. A stiffness in their stance when your voice stays steady, a slight pause when they realize your emotions are no longer accessible on command. They're not only confused, they're threatened, because the new you isn't shaped by them. The new you cannot be swayed by nostalgia, charm, or emotional traps. The new you thinks, chooses, and speaks from a place they don't control anymore. What they see now is a person who has healed parts of themselves the narcissist relied on staying wounded. Your confidence unsettles them. Your calmness shakes them. Your emotional independence dismantles the dynamic they once believed was unbreakable. Narcissists need predictable people. People whose patterns they understand, whose hearts they can push and pull at will. But your growth has rewritten your entire rhythm. And it's not just that you've changed, it's that you've become someone who no longer lives in reaction to them. Someone who doesn't seek their approval, doesn't fear their rejection, doesn't crave their validation. That scares them in a way they will never admit aloud. Because the moment they witness the new you is the moment they recognize their influence is gone, their power is fading, and their place in your life is no longer secure. And nothing rattles a narcissist more than realizing they've been replaced not by another person, but by your strength. And it's that fear, quiet but unmistakable, that fuels their next move. Because once they understand you've become someone they can neither predict nor direct, they reach for the last thing they believe might still succeed: your emotional reaction. This takes us into the seventh truth. The moment their panic becomes visible, your detachment shakes them. To a narcissist, your detachment isn't just surprising, it's destabilizing. They expect tension, anger, longing, anything indicating you're still emotionally tied to them. But when you meet them with calm neutrality, when you speak without trembling, when your eyes stop searching theirs for guidance, they feel the ground shift beneath their feet. Detachment is the one thing they cannot use because it offers nothing to manipulate. They'll try to ignite something, anything in you, a reaction, a spark, a crack. Maybe they'll push for a deeper conversation, hoping to pull you back into emotional territory. Maybe they'll act wounded, confused, or offended to stir guilt. Or they may switch to arrogance, pretending your peace means nothing. But underneath the performance, their panic grows, because no matter how hard they press, your emotions remain steady, like a door softly closing in front of them. Your detachment tells them the truth they dread. You no longer orbit around their approval. You no longer move to their emotional rhythm. You no longer look for closure from someone incapable of giving it. And this calm, this unwavering stillness is something they cannot process because they cannot control it. You are no longer feeding their ego with reactions. You're starving the very dynamic that once defined your bond. And in that powerful quietness, they realize they've lost something far more valuable than your attention. They've lost their grip on your heart. And nothing terrifies a narcissist more than discovering they no longer hold influence over a soul they once assumed would always return. And in that instant, when your detachment leaves them scrambling, something profound becomes clear, not to them, but to you. This is where the eighth truth settles in. You hold the power now, because all their tactics, all their polished charm, all their probing and testing collide with the reality that you are no longer part of their script. You are no longer the stage where they perform. You are no longer available for manipulation. You are free. And in that freedom, the power shifts entirely to your hands. They may still try, subtly or boldly, to reclaim what they think is theirs. They may test boundaries, attempt to lure you into old emotional cycles, or pretend vulnerability. But the difference now is that you see through all of it. You recognize it for what it is: an attempt to regain influence they never truly earned. And in seeing it, you claim a power they can't comprehend or interrupt. The power of choice, the power of clarity, the power to engage or not engage on your own terms. This power is quiet but unshakable. It's the calm in your eyes, the steadiness in your tone, the certainty in your steps. It's the awareness that your worth is no longer measured by someone else's opinion, no longer tied to someone else's approval, no longer negotiable. And as they reach, as they test, as they perform, they only highlight the depth of the control you now hold simply by being fully yourself. The irony is stunning. They returned to see if they could still affect you, to check whether their old influence still mattered. And in trying, they revealed the very thing they feared: that you've moved beyond them, beyond the drama, beyond the need for validation from a heart that couldn't offer real reciprocity. The power is yours, and it has always been waiting in your silence. And with that power firmly in your grasp, the ninth truth emerges, the one that transforms a single moment into a turning point in your life. Your response can end the cycle. because now every word you speak, every moment you pause, every look or gesture holds meaning. You're no longer reacting from old wounds, fear, or longing. You're responding with intention, and that intention is the key to dissolving patterns that once trapped you. The narcissist will still attempt to provoke, confuse, charm, or guilt you, but you're no longer swept into their current. You get to choose how to engage, or if you engage at all. One steady statement, one refusal to be pulled into the past, one silent walk away can cut the invisible strings that once controlled you. This isn't about revenge or proving what they've lost. It's about reclaiming your narrative, reclaiming your peace, and showing that you're no longer available for cycles they depended upon. Your response becomes your declaration. The patterns of the past don't define your present, and they have no authority over your future. By choosing clarity over confusion, boundaries over entanglement, and self respect over approval, you dissolve the power they once carried in your heart. And this is profound, not only for them, but for you. It's the moment you recognize that true liberation was never about removing them physically from your world. It was about removing their impact on your inner world. When you respond with awareness, with calm, with unwavering strength, you rewrite the entire story. Their tests, their charm, their probing, they all lose their force. And in that moment, you realize something extraordinary. The cycle ends not when they change, not when they apologize, but when you step into your own authority, your own voice, and your own freedom. And once that power is claimed, it can never be taken away. And when you respond with clarity, calm, and solid boundaries, the 10th truth rises, the final revelation, and the one that turns this encounter into your victory. This is your comeback story. Because the return of a narcissist has never been about them. It's a mirror reflecting how far you've come, how much strength you've built, and how fully you've reclaimed your life. Their presence doesn't remind you of old pain, it highlights your evolution. When they show up hoping to disrupt your peace or reclaim what they once believed was theirs, they unintentionally spotlight your growth. Every attempt to charm, manipulate, or provoke only magnifies your progress. Your calm, your boundaries, your grounded presence, all of it proves you've stepped into a version of yourself they can no longer touch. In a strange way, their return validates your journey. It signals that you've risen beyond the reach of someone who thrived on control and that you now stand firmly in your own light. And this is where the story transforms entirely. It's no longer about old wounds, old patterns, or old influence. It's about you. It's about your courage to walk away, your patience to rebuild, and your wisdom to recognize your worth. It's about discovering that peace, self-respect, and authenticity aren't just dreams, they're yours. Every moment of fear, doubt, or longing that once tied you to them now becomes the fuel for your freedom. So when a narcissist sees you again after a long silence, they may come to test, charm, or provoke. But the ultimate truth is this: the encounter is not theirs to command. It is yours to witness, yours to rise above, and yours to transform into a story of resilience, empowerment, and undeniable liberation. And that, my friends, is the triumph no one can take from you. So remember this: when a narcissist reappears after a long silence, their behavior reflects nothing about your value and everything about their fear of losing control. Your silence, your growth, your glow, your boundaries, they cannot touch. Every attempt to pull you back is evidence that you've evolved beyond their reach. This moment doesn't belong to them. It belongs to you. Stand tall, speak your truth, guard your peace, and embrace your freedom. Your comeback story is already written, and it begins the moment you refuse to be defined by anyone else.